Okay, in response to some questions and feedbacks that I've been receiving, and I guess it would vary with different people, which country they're from and so forth, when the questions are asked. License, what bands are permitted, whether it's regular, advanced, or technical license. So which radio should they buy first? This seems to be a question. And then what should they watch out for or expect to buy? For short-term or long-term considerations, or both. You have to take that into consideration. Now, this is not my first purchase, but after moving around, selling off my gear and selling down, it was time to buy some ham gear. And how did I start? Or should I say restart, because I've literally had dozens and dozens of different radios, just about anything that was available in every mode. Going back even before iPhones existed, or even before there was cellular service. So there was different needs at different times. So since I moved here, it was time for me to pick up some new gear. And I was trying to decide, should I go with the Icom 705 or should I go with the Icom 7300? Oh, don't mind the noise in the background. My cat decided to look outside. Anyways, personally, I prefer Icom. In the past, I have used Kenwood and mostly Yaesu. So it's a personal choice. Now, the concepts that I'm presenting is not brand specific. So keep that in mind. I'm not suggesting any particular brand. Just what to watch out for each brand that you are interested in. So it's not brand specific. Well, first thing, through my years of experience, I found I never really used over 100 watts. Yes, I had amplifiers in the past, 1,000 watts. Hardly ever used it. I found the secret was the antenna. A directional antenna, high gain worked the best. The ability to switch polarization was beneficial, I noticed. Especially with quad loops, I found this was very effective. Now, I'm not going to be talking about antennas. This is not what this video is about. If there's interest, it can be a later topic. I have touched some options for apartment dwellers in previous videos. Another disadvantage of high power is that you can cause interference to your neighbors and especially to another ham within the same area. In fact, there's one ham on Simplex, their VHF, running low power, even though he's several miles away, but we have line of sight. It literally gives him full-scale reading on his radio. So, yeah, and I have some ham HF not too far away, backyard. Even on HF, it can be, we can end up interfering with each other. So that's why, as a rule, even on HF, especially when I'm using, oops, I have a call. Better hang that up. Hold on. Even though I have 100 watts on my Icom 7300, especially on FT8, I usually run 10 watts, maybe occasionally 30. For FT8, I don't use this so much for making contacts or content, something like that. But running low power, it gives me a more accurate picture of what the propagation is like, and great for testing and comparing antennas. So I try to run even less than 100 where it's applicable. Now, when it comes to power output, obviously the Icom 7300 or equivalent with a variable power output from 0 to 100 watts RF, that would be a pro. It would be a con for the Icom 705 because its variable power is from 0 to 10 watts. And another feature that I took into consideration, even though I tried to match my antennas to the lowest possible standing wave ratio when matching it, yeah, you only can do so much of it, and you move away from that center frequency to up or down. Yeah, SWR goes up. Maybe it's psychological. I know some people kind of say, yeah, it's not important if it's less than 3 to 1. I find it seems to have a slight better reception when you have close to a flat match, and there's less interference. I don't know if it's harmonics or whatever is involved, but I noticed that. Okay, I'm just going to turn the volume on down so we don't hear that. So I like to have a built-in tuner, and this is where the Icom 7300 comes in. It has a built-in, any SWR of 3 to 1, it can bring them down flat, allows me to go from one end to the other band without playing around with the antenna. So that'll definitely be a pro for the 7300. Now it will be a con for the 705 because it does not have a built-in tuner. Now, if I was using the 705 and matching the SWR several times a day, I would consider an external tuner, especially if that's the only radio you have, or for some reason you decided that would be the best way to go. And Icom certainly has a nice one. Expensive, but it's nicely made and effective. Now, I can't say much about it because I don't have one. So, my initial interest, what I want to do at first, okay, sorry about that. I had a bunch of phone calls and interruption came in, so I had to take care of it. Now, I think I was mentioning that I decided for the Icom IC 7300. What I wanted to accomplish initially, I knew as time goes on I would be getting others, so I had other plans too. So I got the Icom 7300 because it has the wattage I wanted, and it's variable. It has a built-in SWR tuner, which was perfect. I didn't want to play around. And it's a neater package. I found the 705 for base operation, unless I build a cabinet or whatever. Plus, I wasn't sure if I would use it for base or use it for portable or mobile at the time. But I knew I would be facing mounting issues, rat nest type of clutter. If you look at it, there's wires coming out of the side everywhere, which of course can be hidden in a nice cabinet arrangement or setup. It depends, but if you have it sitting on a shelf out in the open, all the wiring will be visible. Not that it's bad, but that was my concern at the time in the environment that I was going to use. So you have to decide that. Now, the 7300 covers the HF band down to 6 meters. Okay. This is a pro for the Icom 705 because it covers both the HF band 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. So that would be a con then for the 7300 when it comes to the frequency and bands that it's capable of covering. Yes, as you can see, I do have handhelds like the TID Radio H8, H3, the Icom ID52 Plus. However, I've noticed that I only use these handhelds mostly when I'm off-grid, fishing, especially ice fishing, hiking, RV activities. I'm backing up my trailer in a tight spot, and it's nice to have a person there warn me off when I get too close to a tree or whatever. So it's handy. Now, I knew I was going to consider a mobile unit eventually. So one of the things that made me pause regarding the Icom 705, it's not really great for mobile use in my truck when driving. I don't feel it's ideal to do so. Especially with handhelds. Issues like distracted driving appearances, you have the handheld in your hand all the time. You gain tickets holding an iPhone in your hand, so try to convince the officer that, no, this is not an iPhone. Either way, you end up with a $300 ticket. And of course, you get poor reception and transmission coverage when you're just using a rubber ducky or an internal antenna. And then, who wants to chat with a noisy mobile operator? So this definitely would be a con for the handhelds and for the Icom 705 because you only have 10 watts. However, it's a pro if you use the Icom 705 when using it as a home base or a fixed portable station. Okay, I guess I got the timer turned off on that one. Okay. Usually, it will be attached to an external VHF UHF antenna or HF with a switch, which is what I have here. And 10 watts would be more than enough to cover or to get access to local repeaters with full quieting. I can even do that with some of these handhelds with 5 watts. Now, if you're living out of town, well, regardless of radio output, you'll end up using directional high-gain rotor-controlled beams. And that may be required if you're off-grid. So I have basically satisfied my HF. The Icom 705, I found I've been using it more and more on VHF and UHF. It works great. It has everything I need to know to see. It has a great display. So I don't really use my handhelds, like I mentioned earlier, at home. I use the Icom 705. Perfect. If I was never going to use this for portable use or take it outside for some reason, I would mount this perhaps in a way that's hidden a little bit more, the connectors and so forth. I have kind of kept it down pretty good. I do have a Bluetooth speaker I use because I find I don't want to drive the audio too hard on the built-in speaker. Over a period of time, it may not be as efficient. So use the Bluetooth. I can do a speaker. I can do it either Bluetooth or directly wired. And I basically use it directly wired because if I use Bluetooth, I have to turn on the Bluetooth device because it shuts down when there's no connection. It's just that particular brand. Okay. Now, for mobile use. Yes, you can use a 705. As I said, in a mobile use, it'd be kind of messy. It's kind of too small, too big, It falls within a too small, too big range. Hard to mount. I know some people have done it. I could do it, even on my truck. Plus, it's a very expensive unit. In a mobile unit, you have to take in consideration accidents, theft, things of that sort. Something like this, you wouldn't want to leave. You want to take it out. So you're better off to buy a mobile unit, cheap as possible, but yet give you everything that you want. As a result, if you have an accident or you have a loss of some sort, you won't cry as much. Unless you have good insurance. After a while, they'll nail you on premiums. Okay. So, regardless of what radio you use, whether it be handheld, the 705, or the the Icom 2730, which I have, the black edition, you still want a high gain external antenna on a truck. And of course, you want power. I find the capability of up to 50 watts would be ideal. And you can vary it, from 5 watt, 10 watts, depending what repeater you're working, or if you're traveling on a fringe. Again, high gain antenna, have the power when you need it, mount in such a way that it's visible and safe, without causing any distractions. I find a mobile unit is probably the closest you can get. And the Icom 2730, which I have a video here on it already, it comes apart with a head and a body. And the head is very small, magnetically mounted. It'd be so easy and quick to take it out, lock it up somewhere out of sight when you're parked. Or put it in the side of your pocket if you're going to be there coming back in a short while. The body, of course, could be mounted in the trunk, or perhaps well mounted and bolted down underneath the seat or something of that sort. Now, I remember years ago, before there was cellular service. In fact, the CB band at that time was strictly for commercials. I know taxi, delivery, so forth, used to have CB radios. We call it CB radios, but it was just, it was only a commercial license. You had to be a business to get it. And being an electrical contractor at that time, I had the CB radio, which was great. And then when they were opened up to the public, it became a chicken band. And was not very useful for business use anymore. You just were covered over when the skip conditions occurred. So ham radio is where I end up going, not for commercial use, but for personal use, because I was always driving in a remote area, and it was nice to be able to contact someone. In those days, the repeaters had what they call phone patches, where I could technically phone any number. And even in my ham shack, I would have overseas people who would, check in with a local ham operator in the area, and they would talk to me, and I would patch to a local telephone number so they can talk to their wife or family or whatever. So that was a very common practice. It was a nice service for many people at that time. Now, today, of course, we have the iPhone, we have cellular coverage. However, my experience in the Calgary area, Alberta, there's a lot of areas where cellular coverage is nil, very poor. Especially as you travel, you end up dropping calls. So it's still nice to have a ham radio, and with repeaters that are located in remote areas too. You always have some sort of communication in case you need to have help or you want to relay a message. And some of the repeaters are also linked. In fact, they're linked all over, right across Canada. So it's a very handy service. So having a radio covering VHF, UHF, or more bands with power output from low to 50 watts, high gain antenna mounted on the roof would be the best setup. Which is the reason why I decided on the Icom 2030, I think it is, the digital black edition, just came out recently. I have a video on it. Now, if you're into digital modes like D-Star, you could consider maybe the Icom ID5100. I find D-Star is very limited as to how many repeaters support that. And depending on who you're talking, some of the D-Star equipment people are using, the audio quality is very poor. So it's not ideal. In fact, I just gained someone that is, okay, it's a local ham. He's using it. In a noisy environment like a truck, you want good quality. You don't want noise. You don't want picketing type of signals. So for me, digital was not important. I wanted a VHF, UHF, 50 watts power. And plus it was cheaper. I saved myself several $100s by buying the 2730 instead of the 5100. However, if your mobile use is occasionally, you use it once in a while, or once in a while it's a mobile, base, or portable, then maybe the ID 5100 might be worth the difference in price, because you can then use that for mobile, for base, and portable, for taking care of all your VHF and UHF needs. However, you won't have the HF. Now, there are radios that have HF capabilities. You can consider that. It just depends if you want only one radio or if you want two. Now, one of the main reasons why I got the Icom 2730, the Black Edition, and this applies to the 5100, and I'm sure other brands have it, is cross-band capabilities. This would allow me to use a mobile radio to extend the coverage of low-power devices such as handhelds when I'm off-grid or backyard monitoring. So basically, I have my 2730 mounted, whether it be in a mobile, maybe a base or RV with an external antenna, high-gain antenna probably. I could be a few kilometers away from the site and talk to others in the group that happen to be set up the same way, or actually even linked to a particular repeater. And of course, you use tone squelch and these things so that you don't trip repeaters or have activity from noise or something of that sort. So it's only when there's an actual valid transmission. Very, very useful. And the 2730 also has more mounting options because you can detach the head, stuffing the body elsewhere. I do have room to mount the whole thing as one unit if I wanted to. Definitely be easier and cleaner than the IC705, and the price considerably cheaper. So for security, safety, theft, damage, I prefer to lose the 2730 before I lose the 705. You have to take that in consideration because vandalism is going to be a very, very big problem. So this would be a pro for the Icom 2730. Of course, the con would be no HF capabilities. So cheap is important, less cost in the event of theft. And having a detachable head makes it safe to leave it in a mobile. Also, if you're interested in satellite operations, then having a radio that can receive and transmit on both bands at the same time is a must. This way you can do satellite operations where you perhaps transmit on UHF and listen on VHF or vice versa, depending on the equipment. And the 5100 has that same capability. So if that's an area of interest, satellite work, you want to take that in consideration when you're deciding what brand to buy. Now, one more thing. Tech. Programming is often required, especially if you travel a lot. So what tech should you have in your equipment? An SD card option is ideal. Some sort of external storage device. It allows you to do your own thing. You don't have to depend on third-party programs. Having Bluetooth is great for external speakers, like I have here, or headphones. I don't use headphones, but I like external speakers. Having Wi-Fi is great for internet access. Now, for radios that have USB, like the Icom 7300, the hardwire option is okay. But when using outside of your home-based setup, then you may lose internet, unless you're in an area where you have direct contact connection to internet. With Wi-Fi, you probably can use cellular service if you had to, depending on what you're trying to do. Another area that you want to check is to be sure what software is available for your computer system, Windows or Mac, and any of your computer devices like iPad, iPhone. Now, I use a Mac-only device, and for me, all the software is available for what I'm interested in. If necessary, to use Windows, sometimes the Icom software is available both for Mac and for Windows, and I'll compare it, Windows versus Mac, to see what's the difference. Or when it's only available for Windows, then I do have an Intel Mac that I boot into Windows. Right now it's Windows 10. One day maybe Windows 11. And it works great. The only thing I could suggest, if you have an old computer and you're a Mac user, a Mac with an Intel, keep it. Don't sell it. The current chips, like the M1 and to M4, currently, they're limited to run Windows ham radio apps. From the little bit I've done, I'm having issues installing drivers, and so some of the software will not work or get recognized. So if you're into digital modes, then having all those features are essential. So keep that in mind. Okay, I think I spent enough time. I just kind of give you a general idea, hoping to answer a whole bunch of questions under one video. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you enjoyed this video or you find it might be a benefit to others, thumbs up would be helpful. Feel free to comment, ask questions in areas that you may want more info. If it's my power to do so, I'll answer them as soon as I can. Have a nice day. Take care.